Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hey, Tom, how you doing? Not the smartest guys in the room. We're talking about rules of engagement. You are running a business. Act like it today. So how's life been in your world, Tom?
Good, man. Good. Yeah, everything's going well. It's the day before Halloween. Last week, um, I live in kind of a little bit of a rural area. So they do a lot of they do a lot of trunk or treats around here, for kids, because obviously, when the houses are sometimes a quarter of a mile apart with, driveways are set back from the road, and, it's just not, and there's no street lights and things like that. It's not really a good neighborhood to go trick or treating in. You could spend hours walking around and only hit 5 houses and not get very much candy. So they do these trunk or treat events. So I'm, as probably some other people know, I'm a member of my local volunteer fire department. And so we hosted one for our town, at the sort of town center, the municipal buildings area, last Friday. And I've got a really cute picture of Isla. Her first Halloween, we got her a little cow costume, really just footy pajamas that have cow print on them, basically, and a little hat with some ears on it. And it was very cute. And there's a picture of her, me holding her, and she looks very sad in the picture. She's kind of like looking over my shoulder and just kind of with her bottom lip out, looking very sad. It's a super cute picture. But anyway, yeah. So that was last weekend, and then on Saturday and Sunday ended up spending all day in the woods fighting a local wildfire, because we had some really dry conditions here, and ended up with a 30-something acre wildfire going in the woods, not too far from home. So ended up there with the fire department and some state agencies, and dropping water on it with helicopters and all that good stuff for 2 days straight over the weekend. So it's been busy. It's been busy, I guess, is the right way to say it. How about you? How are things going for you?
Well, I'm not going to skip over a story of fighting fires without asking you a question back. So is one honorable? Thank you for doing that. One, like, where do you get water from? Do you dump something from helicopters? You just put up, you take an excavator in? Is there something we can glean from fighting fires? Go on.
Yeah, I mean, so when it comes to fighting wildland fires or forest fires, there's, different methodologies for different types of fires, right? So this was probably what most people are thinking. When you listen to this, you're imagining like sort of the California wildfires, where it's these huge sort of conflagrations where the trees are fully engulfed in flames, and there's flames leaping 50 feet into the air, and all that kind of stuff. That is not the kind of fire this was. So this was a ground fire. In the Northeast, we have a lot of deciduous trees, so trees that drop their leaves every year. So there's a lot of leaf litter on the ground, and then you end up with what's called a duff layer on top of the soil. And that duff layer is basically decomposed organic material, that leaf litter breaking down, but there's a lot of air in it. There's a lot of holes. It's very sort of porous. And so what happens is, in a ground fire, is you have that leaf litter burning, the stuff on top of the ground, the dead branches that have fallen out of trees, stuff like that. But then you also end up with that duff layer burning. And so what you really have to do to stop the fire is essentially dig, right? You have to dig down through that duff layer, break that duff layer, and get down to what they call mineral soil, in order to stop the fire. Because mineral soil doesn't burn, but duff does burn. So that was basically what we did all weekend, was just digging a perimeter around this fire to stop it from spreading. On one end, it ended up getting to a roadway, and that acted as a fire break. It wasn't able to spread across the roadway because, again, it was a low-lying ground fire. A lot of the flames were, sort of 12 to 18 inches tall, so not a huge conflagration. but and not sort of as dangerous as those fast burning large wildfires that we see in news coverage in California. It did not get to anyone's homes or anything like that, so we were able to make sure that we saved property and no one's life was at risk. But yeah, it was a lot of work, and we did actually, on one side we were able to get a mini excavator in, and able to dig a trench with a mini excavator down one side of the fire, but then the other side of the fire all had to be hand dug. Um, and when it comes to water, we did put water on parts of the fire, and so there's two ways to do it. You do it with water packs, right? So it's a backpack full of water. It's a backpack that holds about 6 gallons worth of water, and then essentially a squirt gun, right? So it's a giant super soaker, and you go around with that and you put water on hot spots. And then the other thing is, where you can, within a couple hundred yards of a roadway or an access point, we have brush trucks that are, built on 4-wheel drive pickup truck platforms. And we can get those in there, feed water to them, and then run hose lines off of them to be able to put some water on the fire that way. So we used those methodologies, using water tankers to relay water up to the brush trucks. We used water packs to actually put water on the fires directly, and we also did a lot of digging.
I have one of my authors, Greg Weinberg. He just went back to in the middle of writing a book a couple months ago, and he's a coach and works with men, helping them with challenges of being a dad and things like that. In the middle of writing this book, he goes back to school, goes to the academy to become a professional fireman. So I respect you and him, but I wonder, is there a fear, like, of every fire? Is there a fear? Like, I know that's not where we're going, but I'm not going to pass this opportunity to dig in and ask you, like, I mean, hot flames that could burn you bad. Is every time you think in your heart, like, is there something?
I mean, I think it depends on the situation. I think, anybody who doesn't recognize the inherent danger is probably a fool, right? I mean, there is danger involved. Absolutely. Fire is somewhat predictable, but can change quickly, right? Wind can change direction, can push fire back on you. Especially in a wildfire, things like that. You can end up in a house fire. You can end up with fire moving through walls where you can't see it. It can move. It can be burning underneath you, in the basement or on a floor below you that you're not aware of, that can create dangerous situations. So I think, anybody who doesn't recognize the inherent danger is a fool. But I think the key to sort of, being able to operate in those conditions is having a healthy respect for what you're doing, and the inherent danger associated with what you're doing, and then using that respect to keep yourself and the people with you safe, right? So that's a big part of it, is always kind of looking out for your buddies, making sure that everybody is operating safely and responsibly. People do get caught up in the moment and have a tendency to run a little bit wild and get a little bit reckless in the heat of things, no pun intended, right? But in all the excitement of knocking down a fire, of putting out a fire, and sometimes that can create really dangerous situations. So you don't go in there, shaking with fear, but you definitely have healthy respect for the danger of the situation and the gravity of the situation you're in. There was no point over the weekend where I was even remotely fearful for my life. Definitely not at all. There were times when, I was thinking, like, okay, if the wind turns and this really comes back on us this direction, we're gonna have to head down the hill this way to get away from it. Making sure that you don't kind of paint yourself into a corner and end up in a situation where you can't get out of there. But even so, again, the flames were small enough you could literally jump over them and be in a relatively safe area that you could walk through that had already burned. So there was never a point over the weekend where I was in any real fear for my well-being. We were trying to make sure that people didn't get hurt, didn't overexert themselves, which is always a cause for concern. You're hiking up and down very steep terrain in the hills fighting this fire, and I'm fortunate enough. I've got a really good base of fitness. It's relatively straightforward for me to do. I spend a lot of time exercising and training. So for me, it's comfortable ish. But for other people who don't do what I do in terms of Ironman training or athletics, it can be dangerous, right? To go from 0 to 100 in terms of level of exertion can put a lot of strain on people's bodies. And one of the most common causes of death for firefighters is heart attack. So we're always watching out for those kinds of things, much more concerned for people getting injured from the terrain or overexertion than there was from the fire.
Well, Tom, it is good work you do. And so, no, telling us about a forest fire, I want to, not to be like, hey, this weekend I went to a Steeler game and cheered like hell, I think we should talk about it a little bit. So, okay, not the smartest guys in the room. We're going to talk about the rules of engagement today. You're running a business. So one of the things I would say, what is your business? What do you do? Who's going to buy it off of you? Like somebody will come to me with some idea, and I have a lot of ideas, right? I love ideas. And there are millions of bad ideas. And you think, who's going to buy that? Who would want that? Why would they work with you? What do you know about it? So, Tom, that's where I want to start. So then we're coming to you, Chris, Julie, what's going on? Rules of engagement. You're running a business. Hello, everybody who's here today. Go on, Tom.
Well, I'm curious, Dom, if there's something specific or a story you can share that kind of that brought this front of mind for you. What kind of put this on the front of your mind?
I do deal with this on a daily basis. So, for instance, an author might want to be a speaker, or somebody might want to write a book and say, I want to speak on stages. Okay, it's fair. That's for what reason? But I see myself speaking on stages. Okay, what are you going to talk about? Okay, well, I'm going to tell my story. Okay, to who? You're going to tell who. Is it hospital systems? I have authors that make big bucks speaking to hospital systems. I have authors that make big bucks speaking to prison systems. I have authors that make big bucks speaking at conventions and things like that. Who is going to pay you to speak? I've spoke a lot of times, I got paid to speak, and there was times when I was coming up through the ranks that I was sharing the wrong message with the wrong group, right? And I'm sitting there realizing, wah, 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 wah. This is not the message for these people. So as I did it more and more, I would talk to the businesses before. What is the message you're trying to get across? How does my message apply? So this is where I wanted to. This is like a daily thing with me, Tom, where I want to speak on stages. It could be somebody that hasn't written yet. It could be somebody we're having a meet and greet yet. Well, and then what are you going to talk about? How does it help them? Why would they pay you? Why I want to speak to Google. Well, how does that apply to Google? And I have authors that speak at Google. How does that apply that what you're saying is going to help Google? So now that you poke the bear, there you go, Tom. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, so I got a couple of thoughts on this. I think one is sort of taking a little bit of a step back, right, and looking at this from a higher altitude. I would venture to guess that this is a pretty common thing that happens. Something that I've definitely done myself, and sort of been called to the mat on before, is coming up with an idea, right? Coming up with a solution to a problem that doesn't exist, right? And I think a lot of people do that. It's they have a great idea or something that they think is a great idea. Maybe it solves a problem for them, but it's not a problem that's shared by a lot of people. And if it's not shared by enough people, then it's not viable as a product, right? Or a service. You ultimately you have to solve a problem for enough people to be able to establish a market, to make a business work, right? To generate enough revenue for the business to work. And if the problem isn't big enough or doesn't impact enough people, it's likely not going to work as a business, right? And people like myself and like you who are, I mean, I've always kind of thought of myself as an ideas guy. I have like 100 ideas before breakfast. You know, my brain's kind of always going, and oh, what about this? Oh, maybe we could do this. I wonder if somebody's ever done this before, right? Like all the time that's going through my head. What I find super useful is when somebody calls me to task and asks, okay, well, how many people do you think share that problem? Right? Let's look, let's do a little research online. Let's see what we can find, right? Is there a market for the solution that you're proposing? Or is it really about solving a problem for yourself? And that leads me into the second thing that I wanted to say is that I think sometimes, and again, I'm guilty of this myself. Nobody's perfect, right? Sometimes you need to be reminded to put your audience first, right? That at the end of the day, as a business, right, as a communicator, as a speaker, right, you are there for the community that you're serving. You are there for the audience. You are there to provide value and solutions to them. And that's what they're paying you for, literally, what they're paying you for. So you have to remember that while you may get really excited about a solution that you've devised, right? You may get really excited about something that you want to speak about on stage. That doesn't necessarily mean that other people are also going to be excited about it or that it serves your community or your audience. So I think it's important to remember that, you know, when you're engaged in those activities, whether it's running a business, and that business could be a product business, a manufacturing business, a direct to consumer business, a B2B business, whatever the case may be, or your role as a speaker or entertainer or somebody up on stage, you know, educating and providing value to people, you're there for the audience and their needs, their desires have to come first. No matter how excited you are about whatever, you know, wild and crazy idea you've come up with. And believe me, I can empathize. I come up with lots of wild and crazy ideas all the time, some of which I act on, including, you know, Iron Man and all of that kind of crazy stuff. But yeah, just because I'm excited about it doesn't mean anybody else is. I don't expect anybody else to. I don't expect you to go do an Iron Man, Don, because you've heard me talk about it 100 times, right? I don't expect Chris to do an Iron Man because he's heard me talk about it 100 times. But yeah. So speaking of Chris, I mentioned Chris on purpose. That was a really, really weak segue to try to bring Chris into this conversation. So Chris, what do you think about people who kind of get caught up in their own ideas, and don't kind of follow the rules of engagement and put their audience first? And Chris,
There you go. I'm on.
There he
I'm
is.
on. Yeah. You know what's funny? As a former stand-up comedian, you see it all the time. You get people who are coming in to entertain people who have paid for like a meal, for drinks. Maybe they're on a date and they paid a cover charge to get in there. And on open mic nights, it's everybody in the world who thinks they are the next Richard Pryor. And most of the time, they're not. So when you go to an open mic night, it's exactly that. It's people who think that they are something and they want to, I mean, they're selling it to the people, but the crowd is the absolute acid test for that. And if no one's laughing, you're not selling the right thing. You're not connecting with them in a way that they paid for. And that's a really hard thing too, connecting with people through commonality that's kind of universal, rather than like going to a convention of like aircraft assembly workers. You're going to have to be real specific about your aircraft assembly humor. So the more you stay in your little pigeonhole, the less people you can really help.
Yeah, I like that. When you started talking, Chris, about stand-up comedy, the first thing that popped into my head actually was like the first season of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. For anybody who's seen that series, that Amazon series, is in the first season, the husband fancied himself a stand-up comedian, and basically he was just ripping off other people's material. And it turned out that his wife was actually the one who had the skill, right? Who had the gift, and the husband was just a bad imitation. So yeah, it just made me think of that people will get up on a stage, and he was up there for himself. He was up there because he wanted to be somebody that people looked up to, literally, as he stood on stage, and his wife was just up there for the laughs. And ended up that she was obviously ultimately successful in that career, and he was not.
Well, because she was authentic and he was not. That's who she is, and that's what, when you go up on stage to do comedy, people don't want to see your act. They want to see you and your value to them, giving them a connecting experience. And when you are coming at it from a place of ego, where you're like, I am God's gift to comedy, it's probably going to be a dumpster fire. But when people can smell that authenticity, when they can see it, and they start to see that it's coming from your soul, you can't lose.
Yeah, I love that. What do you think, Dom?
I think it's good stuff, and I'm going back to his airplane assembly plant. An airplane assembly plant needs a lot of great speakers, but you can't go into an airplane assembly plant and talk about, I don't even know, because I know nothing about what goes on at an airplane assembly plant, right? But I'm sure.
I think they assemble airplanes, Dom.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe.
Still doesn't mean we know what's going on there.
That's right, Chris. Hey, I want to just a sidebar here. I've been drinking this coffee. You can't see it, but if you can see, it's pretty white in there today. But I'm sitting here drinking this coffee this morning, and it has two different kinds of creamer in, because one ran out and I put another one in. One was peppermint mocha, one was chocolate mocha or something like that. But what I realized when I'm sitting here drinking this is I forgot the 3 scoops of sugar today. So I'm cranky because I don't have my 3 scoops of sugar. So I wanted to say, I'm gonna sidebar here. I'm gonna keep going off, and you're gonna have to rein me in. One of the things I was thinking about last year when we handed out lumps of coal at Christmas time, and it's not lumps of coal time yet, but since you were poking me about things that agitate me. One of the things that agitates me so thoroughly right now, and we have a week till election, something like that. One of the things that agitates me so much is a 24-hour news cycle where people give opinions. I wish there was the news like when Walter Cronkite, where I wish there was only like 2 hours of news on all these channels and no opinions. Because the opinions, I wish John Jay was here for me. The opinions are so biased either way that you lose track of what the news actually is. I wish there
coming
was,
up. I'm going to try to get him in.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Tell him, because Dom's mad about. I just want fact, and then we can all look at these facts and say, yeah, this is clearly a fact. But as soon as people start giving opinion and they're biased on opinion one way or another, man, that's tough. So that's the lump of coal, Tom. Sorry, go on.
No, all good. I mean, I was, if anything, I was like almost physically restraining myself from launching into a tirade about the crap you put in your coffee, and all the ridiculous, you don't like coffee. Stop acting like you like coffee flavored, candy beverages, but you don't actually like
What's
coffee.
It matter? See, you're a coffee snob. Tom is a coffee snob. See, this is it. I like what I like. You like what you like.
I'm not saying you can't like it. I'm just saying it's not coffee.
How do I put my hand up?
Ouch.
If you, Chris, if you hit mute and unmute yourself, you flash your mic. That's a good way to let us know you want to say something. Which we already figured you wanted to say something, because you started talking. Go ahead, Chris.
It's like my wife. My wife is like, "Ooh, coffee. I can't take it." Well, now she goes to work and she's like, "Oh, I had 3 coffees today." I said, "All right." So I stopped by work to bring her lunch, and I'm like, "Oh, is that your coffee?" She said, "Yeah." It's diabetes. It's just creamer, hazelnut, French vanilla, 12 sugars, some kind of syrup, and maybe a thimbleful of coffee. And I'm like, wow, you're going hard over here. But that's people who like coffee drink coffee. People who want the caffeine and get late stage diabetes want the flavor. I used to be one of those guys. I was a puffy at 336 pounds. I just sent you a picture of that, Tom, back when we were filming. And just I'm telling you, Dom, get away from that stuff or you're going to be, woo, I don't know, get something else. Like, what can you get that's like some kind of root or something that gives you energy? I don't know.
Dom also, I don't, for anybody watching, Dom just showed his cup to the camera again. It is so pale that it looks like he just set it down next to some coffee for a couple of minutes and then picked it up and started drinking it and called it coffee, right? Like it looks like it waved to coffee on its way into the cup, and then he just started drinking straight sweetened creamer, with a bit of an odor of coffee attached
today,
to
Tom.
it. What's that?
I said, don't forget, I forgot my sugar today.
I mean, yeah. Like, look, hey, if you want candy, just eat candy, man. Like, I like, or just have a milkshake, for crying out loud. Like, just stop messing around and have a milkshake. Like, why pretending it's coffee? Just have a milkshake.
I like what I like. All right, not the smartest guys in the room. You're running a business, rules of engagement, 24-hour news cycle. Dr. Tachi, Tom, when we started the show, Tom was fighting fires this weekend. So our path is windy today. So Dr. Tachi, you're running a business. Are there rules of engagement, things that make you mad, things that are complete misses where you just wish people would get online, or you see something happening and if they reined it in, they would be far better off? What do you got for us?
Wow, that's a lot. Good morning, everyone.
Hey
I've been
there.
enjoying this whole coffee thing, etc. Very interesting. I will say this, if you don't mind, I wanted to go back to the message part of it, and it's the same thing when you are coming up with let's say a live stream, right, or a show. Now, in your head, you think this will be helpful. You even may have some proof of 1 or 2 people that it would be helpful for. But do you have overwhelming evidence that this message is going to be helpful to, as Tom said, more than just you, or more than just because you want to do it? And that's fine. You could do it because you want to do it. However, if you are intending to somehow monetize this at some point, it has to be more than just, I think this will help somebody. And to be honest, it needs to be more than about monetization, because then you've missed it completely. It can't just be about money. And we've said that before. But when it comes to creating content, right, and then the eventual goal is to perhaps monetize it, it definitely has to resonate with more than just you and your mama and them. It has to be more than that. So I think sometimes to combat this, asking people, you can ask a few people, but then you can do things like surveys. All sorts of social media have now where you could do polls and surveys, etc. And ask people instead of putting words in their mouth. And again, many of us are going to start with what we think is helpful and things we've noticed that are issues, and then you may start making content about that. However, after a while, if you see it's not resonating or it's not having the intended effect, maybe it's because you didn't ask people what they wanted in the first place. It's the same thing to me as, all some of these groups will go like, oh, we're collecting computers for XYZ country. Or did you ask them if that's what they needed? I can't, first of all, you could tell I can't stand that type of thing. Ask people what it is they need and don't assume that they're stupid and don't know what they need. Sometimes people don't, but I would posit for a vast majority of people, they're quite in tune with some of the things they may need. You can introduce other things that would be helpful, but I think for the most part, many people already know what they need. They just may not know how to get there. So that's my 5 cents, 10 cents, dollar, whatever.
I love that, Chris. I'll come to you in a second. Dr. Tachi, thanks so much for kind of getting us back on track. We had been meandering all over the place. So thank you for getting us back on track there. I love the phrase "you, your mama, and them." I that was fantastic. And I think you raise a really good point that the sort of order of operations, right? When you come up with an idea or a solution to a problem, is the first thing you should ask yourself is this something that people need or want? Because it's okay if it's just something people want but don't necessarily need, right? But is this something that people need or want first, right? First and foremost, is it delivering value, right, to people first and foremost? And then secondly, can I make this into a business? Is it possible to monetize this into a business? Can it be sort of, is it sustainable in a business, right? But the first question has to be, is this adding value to your audience, to your community, first and foremost? I think that's a great point. Yeah, it has to be something that appeals to a wider audience than you, your mama, and them, as Dr. Tachi so eloquently put. So thanks for that, Dr. Tachi. Chris, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just on Dr. Tachi's point, I picked up a job years ago when I first had a kid as a construction. I'd never done construction before, and I was very eager to help. And somebody needed some dirt moved, and I'm like, well, how hard is it to use an excavator? And I jumped up and almost killed about 8 people. And the guy came over to me and said, hey, I appreciate what you're doing, but try not to help. And when people want to help you and they think they're in the right place, they're kind of like, I guess it's what Dr. Tachi said is, how do you know that you have value to someone that's the same value you wanted to give? Because I wanted to help, but that value was swing and a miss over there. And so with the internet now, everybody kind of, I've seen it on here a couple times where people come out and they're like, oh, I'm funny, I'm going to start a podcast. That's just not enough. I want to know, I guess, what Dr. Tachi thinks about word of mouth and people. The value comes from spreading from one person to another. Oh, did you go see Dr. Tachi? She's great. Did you go see John? He's great. And then how do you market something? Like, because to me, marketing is Dom's coffee. Caffeine is the need, but you got to market it to get people to drink it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Dr. Tachi, do you have any thoughts on that, on word of mouth marketing, or how to sort of spread the word to broaden your audience?
Yeah, sure. But the for real guru John is here, so I think he would be a better person than I. But I love word of mouth. One thing about word of mouth, though, and it can be very effective. Obviously, it's going to be smaller than in terms of impact in most cases. But we also have to remember that sometimes some of us already exist in, I don't want to say echo chambers, but in people that we tend to commune with people that are like us in most cases. And so what you may end up getting is a whole bunch of yous when it comes to that. And generally that's not what you want. So I think word of mouth can be extremely effective, but there are those cases where it gets spread amongst people that are like each other. And so you don't get as many as you would as if it was broadcast in some other way. That's just my thought, but word of mouth can be effective.
Good stuff, Dr. Touch. Well, and I just want to jump on the word of mouth. Depends on whose word of mouth it is, where it goes. Sometimes we talk about my friend Justin in here who has Justin's almond butter, Justin's the peanut butter brand. Kim Kardashian tweeted about it and said it was great 10 years ago. You know, Ashton Kutcher posted about it. It was on Oprah's Favorite Things. That's pretty good word of mouth, right? So if you get it to the right person coming out of the right, or let's say you're into biking and all of a sudden a championship biker says, wow, this is the best bar to eat or the best pack to wear on your back or whatever, then you might listen to that person. All right. So where was I going? I had aside something I wanted to tell you guys in this realm of starting businesses and silly ideas and things like that. So McDonald's has this problem with the quarter pounders recently, you know, like the onions on the quarter pounders. And I'm talking to my dad the other day, and I keep talking, he has a nursery. And I keep saying I'm going to buy a truckload of flowers, like a tractor trailer truck full of flowers. And he's never had flowers at his business. He hates flowers. You know, people don't really, the nursery is more for like the landscaping. But I keep saying I'm going to buy like thousands of dollars in flowers and bring them out. So I think this is a good idea, but I'm listening to you guys say like, I'm listening. It's not about my community. It's off message for what I do, but I still think I should buy a truckload of flowers. So I'm telling my dad this idea, and he's like, hate it. And then he goes to me, he's like, Dominic, I would rather sell quarter pounders out there than flowers. So he is not agreeing. But then him disagreeing with my idea so much makes me think that maybe it is a good idea. But then to what Dr. Tachi said, you got to listen to the community, listen to the feedback. What the hell am I even thinking about flowers for? So that's what I have to say, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, fair point from your dad. I'm not sure what you're talking about with flowers or what a truckload of flowers even mean. Are you talking cut flowers? Like you trying to open?
Yeah, come on, man.
Bouquets? Like what are you talking about?
Okay. So you want to know about my flower business? I'm going to tell you how good I did it.
All right, I don't want to know details. Just to be clear, I was just wondering. Like, are you talking about flowers as in potted plants?
I'm going to give you. Okay, every year in May, Mother's Day, and at the beginning of the summer, people buy flowers for around their houses, around their pools, to give to mom. These are potted plants to put around house outside. I am saying when I say a truckload, that means go to a distributor. See, Carrie Brett, she wants to hear about the flowers. Yes, I'm saying buy a truckload.
So you're talking about buying like a truckload of mums or something to sell.
Mums, lilies.
Gotcha. Okay.
Pre-potted flower pots that are big, and then selling them out there. But this is off message. Carrie's obsessed with flowers. I like flowers. We got to get off this, Tom.
Well, we've got, and I want to point out too, looking at the time, we got 20 minutes left, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more people to get through, plus show and tell, plus a wrap up. So I just want to point that out because I think we've been a little bit meandering today. Dr. Tachi tried to get us back on task.
It won't happen. I won't allow it. I won't allow it.
So, which I was party to. I asked the follow-up question on the flowers. It's totally. I'm as guilty as anybody. So I just
imagine if he had sugar,
right?
Right. So
3 big scoops. Yep.
Yeah, I just want to point that out. Maybe we should refocus. Get to hear from a few more people before we have to call it in now 19 minutes.
So okay, so let's get to Yolanta. We'll get to Julie, John, Chris, Carrie. We're talking about business rules of engagement. That's where we started at. Like if you have some basic rules, if you're starting a business, if you need to do. John Jay, I got off on a tangent about, and we're coming to you for this question, so I want you to think about it. But first, we're going to Yolanta and Julie. I got off on this tangent of lumps of coal, things I hate, and it was a 24-hour news cycle where so much is opinion based. Like I wish there was just 2 hours of fact and then they went off the air, but I want to hear from him on that. So what, Tom, go on.
Well, now you're like, oh, we're going to get back on track and talk about business, but here's this other thing I want to talk about.
But that one was specifically for John. So, okay, Jolanta, can you do
it was specifically for John. Now let's go to Jolanta.
Yeah. Go on.
Oh, good morning, you guys. The banter cracks me up. That's a-okay. I was just listening on the business stuff because I think it's really important, especially when you're talking about making something viable from nothing. I remember when I started my business almost 15 years ago, and I was still doing traditional form of social media or marketing, if you will. And I loved Dr. Tashi's share about asking, what is it that you want, or what is it in the business that you want, or how are you trying to get your clients? And another thing that came to mind to me was certain red flags when you're working with a business can also be a good benefit to that too. That's something I've been thinking about, because along the way you learn the techniques from the ground up, and then once you get comfortable about asking for those clients, then like, okay, what are some of the major red flags I might be missing? Like, does this person have a business card? Does this person have a website? Do they have a link tree? There's all these different steps that you take to be a reputable business before you can even have something of a product or a service that you want to sell. Or do you have referrals out there? Like she was saying, talking about promotion. How are you marketing? Are you using SEO online? Those types of things to get your business out. Like, are there people here in Clubhouse that can trust and like and no trust factor? So, if Dom has a coffee that he loves from a brand, that's totally okay. And if Tom has real coffee, that's okay. We all like different things, and maybe Julie might like something else. So, we all have different things that we like. But at the end of the day, business is business. And I was thinking about your business card. Like, what does your business card say about you? And I'll end it there. Thanks, Dom. Back to you guys.
Jolanta, good stuff. Go on, Tom.
I was just gonna say, I love the little, maybe it was a bit of a Freudian slip in there. But if Dom's got a coffee that he likes, that's great. And if Tom has a real coffee that he likes, that's great too. I like that little slip in there. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I appreciate it nonetheless. But yeah, I mean, I think Jolanta, great points all around. Definitely worth thinking about. And to your last point there about your business card, like what's the impression you're leaving in people's hand, right? Like, what's the impression you're leaving with people when you walk away? When they look back at that card, what are they going to be thinking about you, right? So I think that's a good point as well. Let's keep moving, because again, the clock is ticking, and we want to try to get everybody out of here on time. So unfortunately, Chris had to jump, but Julie is still here. Julie, what in your mind are some of the rules of engagement when it comes to business and growing a business, starting a business? What are some of the things that people should keep in mind?
And I know we're on a time crunch, but my first and foremost rule, if you will, of engagement is showing up for other people. Don't be in it just for yourself. Do show up for other people. Thank you. I dropped the mic there.
Love it. Short, sweet, to the point. Tom, what do you think?
That's a good one. We appreciate you, Julie, and we do it for them. That's right. It's not about me. All right. You want to set John up for my question, Tom, since I'm obviously out of control today?
Well, I mean, John, obviously you can hear, we've kind of been all over the map today. We've been talking about all kinds of stuff. You've been in here for a little bit, so you've been hearing some of the asides and tangents. You heard all about the flowers. You were here for that tangent, which apparently Carrie wants to get back to, according to what she's saying in the comments. But yeah, I mean, I think, we were talking about sort of rules of engagement with business, and Dom was just saying, and I think a lot of us, just regardless of, this is nonpartisan. I think we're all sort of getting to our upper echelon limits of how much sort of political news we can take, right? Like we are past the saturation point. And I think, to Dom's point, with the 24-hour news networks, of which there are many, and the need that they have to fill those 24-hour cycles. They have naturally sort of turned to punditry to do it. And you end up with people just spewing opinions, some of which are maybe have some merit or value, but others are completely meritless or valueless. And it's really hard to kind of separate the wheat from the chaff, right? In that context. So, Dom, I guess you wanted to hear what John's thoughts were, as somebody who's in not in news media, but on radio, sort of on broadcast media, what his thoughts were on the 24-hour news cycle. Is that right?
Yeah, and really, because I've heard John say a few times, like, that's your opinion. And when he's interviewing people, like, he deals in fact a lot of times, and I've heard him say, that's your opinion. So I wanted to see how he feels about, like, there's so many opinions out there that, like you said, could be meritless, it's not really news. So John, can you give us what an expert like John J has to say?
Dominic, Tom, I can't stand it, because most of what we used to call news, and by the way, news stands for North, East, West, and South. We grew up with a different environment where they gave you the facts in 30 minutes. You only had 3 channels to look at, some UHF, that was it. So they had to get as much content as possible and have a fluff story, a feel-good story towards the end. Now it is mostly opinion and punditry, that Tom said, trying to get people to hang on and listen longer, because it's all about business. And that applies to newspapers, radio. Watch your television news channel when it comes to storm coverage, and watch how they ramp it up and they build a frenzy. It is about opinion. Oh my God, you better run to the store. You better get milk and bread and everything, toilet paper, you'll be out. It's all for getting more people, more eyeballs on their products so they can deliver for the advertisers. Having said that, it drives me crazy. So what's an old saying? I can't remember who it said. If you rely on the news for your news, you're uninformed. If you don't listen to the news for your news, you have no information. It's a catch-22. When it comes to marketing your business, here's the philosophy I take. And Julie invited me, and I was busy doing other stuff. Think of your marketing or your promotion of your business as a stool. The more legs you have on that stool, the better you are. Companies like McDonald's, Chevrolet, Ford, they do not rely only on word of mouth. Word of mouth is great, but you have no control over it. They do some branding advertising. If you don't focus on SEO, your socials, and some paid advertising, and put at least 3 legs under that stool, you're going to fall on your ass every time. If you rely solely on word of mouth, which you have no control over, you're going to do everything for free. We lose value what our time is. What are you getting for that time response, for the time you put into it? When you can get a lot more response by doing some paid advertising and not have to break the bank doing it. So the more legs under this stool you can put, 3 legs or better, 3 or 4, the better off you are. 2, you're in trouble. 1, don't waver at all, because you'll be flat on your you know what.
I think that's a great point, John. The metaphor of legs on a stool, I think, is great. 3 is kind of the minimum you need. 4 is better, right? I don't know about 5. I don't think I've ever seen a 5-legged stool, but yeah, you need 3 or else you're going to fall over, right? And I think that's a great point. In terms of marketing and advertising and growing and sustaining a business, right? That you have to have multiple channels through which you're reaching your audience and growing your audience, that you can't rely on just one. So yeah, I think we've got Carrie here, and then we're going to go right into show and tell and straight into wrap up, I think, because we're late on time. So all that said, Carrie, I know you wanted to talk about the flowers. So if you want to talk about the flowers, I'm going to say go for it. We got about 2 or 3 minutes here. If you want to ask Dom a question about the flowers or talk about the flowers, who am I to say no? So what do you got? What do you want to know about Dominick's mom's business?
It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. You can connect through giving. Julie hit it on the nail. She was like, make it about other people. So when we went to Creative Con, she put things in the bag, the swag bag, one of the things were this like depuffer under your eyes. I buy it every month just because of that, because it made, well, first of all, I was up late imitating John J. Wiley, and then I paid for it the next morning. But that came in handy. Women love pretty things. When I was suffering tremendously during a breakup that was just insufferable, the one thing that I did for myself was I bought flowers because that lifted my mood. It's proven scientifically that flowers heal. And I know that with my mom having cancer, and that inexpensive, relatively, touch builds community. And so if Dom wants to have a truck of flowers, he can build such a buzz in his community. I'm going to come out with my sheepadoodle. You know, we could do Mother's Day mini sessions, tag on social media. You could just build such a movement because I'm telling you, like, I'm looking at this embossed card by a $30 iPhone case that I got in the mail, and they have these colored like accessories to it. And I'm looking at the card. Women love beautiful things. And I just went away with Julie to New Jersey. She gave me this oil. It's called the Good Oil. I shared it with a few women from Breakfast with Champions, and they've all written me because I shared it with them. And they're like, we want to hang out more. Thank you for the tip. It's a way to build a community, and it's through giving. So that's my take.
Carrie, thank you. And as I was, the thing that early on when I brought this idea up, I thought it was very off message, flowers and things like that. But I do live in a world where I always say my goal is to share inspiration, positivity, and smiles. So maybe we could make one more person smile by sharing a flower. So we will see. Maybe I will argue with my dad and not sell quarter pounders out of this place. Okay. Dara is on the phone. Dara, if you're not on the phone, okay, we're going to go to show. Tom will go to show and tell then. If Dara gets on the phone, we can meet her real quick before the wrap up. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me. What'd you bring? What do you got?
Okay, so I am in recovery. I told you guys about on October 8th, I had surgery. I went in for 5 hernias. I got 6 fixed. They found the 6th. So now I've scheduled it around Steeler games. I don't know if I told you guys that. So Steeler home games, so I could get my proper tailgating in. But now I'm on the mend. I'm riding my bike again. I was cleared to exercise with 10 pounds, like lift more than 10 pounds, not necessarily exercise with 10 pounds. And now I got cleared for 25 pounds. So all I wanted to show you today is my 2 plates. These are plates, Tom. 5-pound plates that I have close to me, and I am starting to use my 5-pound plates because I will be back better than ever. But we are starting with 5-pound plates, whether it's over the head, whether it's shrugs, whether it's curls, whether it's opening my chest up like this. Starting with 5-pound plates. That's all I got, Tom. Go on.
Hey, I like it. And one of the things, I think one of the common misnomers that people have about exercising, specifically with weights and resistance exercising, is that you need heavy weights to build muscle, and it's not true. It's not true at all. Resistance is what you need to build muscle, right? Challenging those muscles, and what actually, according to folks that actually have doctorates in exercise science, what they will tell you is that hypertrophy, or actually the stretch at the sort of extension of the exercise, is what really helps you build muscle. So sometimes it's not about the weight, it's more about the technique. And you can definitely gain muscle and build muscle with lighter weights. So I think it's a good idea to start. And I think maybe it's one of those things to bear in mind as you keep going forward. It's one of the things that I'm thinking about is, when I played football in high school, it was all about, who could put up the most weight on the bench press and who could put up the most weight on the leg press. And now if I get into a gym with some weights, it's, can I, it's, how much weight can I put up for, 10 plus reps super cleanly with really good technique? That's what I'm more interested in. So we've got literally a minute here. We just did show and tell. I've still got to do a wrap up, and we're trying to get everybody out here by 10:30. So 60 seconds or less. Jason,
Yeah, our friend Jason comes around. We like Jason. I check out his stuff on Clubhouse. He's a good dude. So Jason, can you give us a business tip in less than 60 seconds while Tom probably thinks about his wrap up for the first time? So what do you got, Jason?
My business tip is very, very simple. What invitation are you leaving on the table that someone can actually use? Very quick.
There you go, brother.
It's a question you got to think about. Are you giving people invitations or are you giving them orders? That happens so often. Oh, I've got the answer for you. They start with that, or they tell you how to solve their problem. But I'm like, oh, I'm curious about what you're working with. Would you be interested? Just that frame change and talking to a potential client or customer, hey, I'm glad you're here. Can you invite them to be interested because you're interested in something that you have as a resource for them and making a profit from it? So there's your quick answer, 60 seconds or less.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for stopping by today. Thanks to all of you for stopping by today. We have meandered all over the map. We've talked about coffee, pseudo coffee, people who just like caffeine versus the taste of coffee,
firefighting.
We've talked about truckloads
of hernias.
Yeah, truckloads of flowers, Dom's hernias. And in the midst of all of those things, by the way, Dom, I hope you got a 6 for $5 deal there, because they were going in to fix 5. They found a 6th. I hope you got that last one for free. But amongst all of that, weightlifting, we talked about all kinds of stuff today. We were a little bit all over the map. Sometimes it's fun to be a little bit all over the map. Sometimes it's fun for it to be a little frenzied and crazy around here, and give people a chance to talk. We talked about stand-up comedy also with Chris, a former stand-up comedian in the room. So we talked about all kinds of things today. But here's my takeaways, right? The big sort of takeaways that from what everybody said, and from my thoughts and from Dom's input as well. Here, I think, are the big sort of takeaways from the day. One, make sure you're solving a problem that needs solving when it comes to your business, when it comes to rules of engagement. First and foremost, make sure you're solving a problem that needs solving, that you're providing value by doing something that people either need or want you to do. So make sure that you answer that first, right? As Julie said, it should be about other people first. Same, definitely same thought with that. So make sure that you're providing a service or a product or something that people need and or want in their lives. Then worry about figuring out how to monetize that thing. And once you do, if you answer yes, this is something that people need or want, and yes, it can be monetized into a business, then you start thinking about John J. Wiley's advice with, how do I put 3 legs under this stool, right? How do I make sure that my outreach and my marketing and my advertising efforts will actually help me grow this business and make it sustainable long-term, so that I can reach the people that need or want this product or this solution in their lives, so that I can have a broader impact with my business. So I think those are my big takeaways from the day, right? And that's all I got. I don't know what else to say about it. I think we covered a lot of topics, and somehow we managed to provide some value to the audience, despite the fact that we meandered all over the map today, talking about a seemingly unrelated variety of topics. So that's what you get sometimes when you show up for Not the Smartest Guys in the Room. You get Dom and Tom wandering all over the place, and it takes the brilliant people that we bring in here, like Chris, Dr. Tachi, Julie, John, Carrie. I see Lauren, Kevin down there, Beth, Shane, all you folks. You guys are the ones that get us back on track and keep us honest and making sure that we're actually delivering some value for you guys, for our community. So thank you for being here. We appreciate you guys. We love you guys. You guys are the reason why we show up every week almost every week to do this. Don't forget, if you missed part of the show, if you want to hear us talking about hernias or firefighting or any of the other topics we talked about, you can always check us out online. You can watch the replays on YouTube, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. We're also streaming on Twitch. You can find us in any of those places, as always. And if you want to join the conversation, come find NTSG on Clubhouse. For Dom, I'm Tom. This is not the smartest guys in the room. We appreciate you guys. We love you guys. And we will see you next Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. Until then, have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.